Do you really think Jeff the Killer is just another internet creepypasta? A photoshopped image that went viral? Nothing more than digital fiction created to scare teenagers online? What if I told you the truth is far more disturbing? A truth deliberately obscured, distorted, and buried beneath layers of misdirection designed to look like fiction. The story you think you know, of a teenager disfigured in an attack who lost his sanity and became a murderer, is merely the sanitized version, a convenient fiction. The actual case files tell a different story, one that spans decades, involves multiple government agencies, and has left a trail of bodies across America that continues to this day. I've spent the last 3 years piecing together what really happened, police reports that don't add up, missing persons cases that were mysteriously closed, witness testimonies that disappeared from county records, medical files sealed by court order, and the disturbing pattern that connects them all. The earliest documented incident connected to what would later become known as Jeff the Killer occurred in Henderson County, Kentucky in 1957. Local newspapers reported a home invasion that left an entire family dead, the parents and 2 children found with their throats cut from ear to ear. The only detail that didn't make the papers: each victim had been forced to watch the others die, their eyelids sliced off. The killer was never found. 2 months later, a similar murder took place in Roanoke, Virginia, then another in Durham, North Carolina. By the end of 1958, 8 families had been killed in the same manner across 5 states. The FBI opened an investigation, but quickly classified their findings. Through a Freedom of Information Act request, I obtained a heavily redacted report that mentioned only one unusual detail. A teenage witness who survived one attack described the killer as having a face too white to be human, with eyes that wouldn't close and a smile cut into the flesh. The killings stopped abruptly in December 1958. The case went cold, forgotten, until 1963, Marion, Ohio. A 16-year-old boy named Jeffrey Hodek disappeared after reporting a pale man watching him from his window for several nights. His parents dismissed it as imagination. When police finally searched the family home, they found Jeffrey's bedroom walls covered with crude drawings of a white-faced figure with black ringed eyes and a carved smile. Jeffrey's body was never found, but 3 days after his disappearance, his parents were murdered in the same signature style as the 1957-58 killings. The FBI reopened their investigation. This time, they made connections to similar cases dating back to the 1930s. A pattern emerged not just in the method of killing, but in a peculiar detail. In each case, a teenager had gone missing days or weeks before the murders, often after reporting being watched or followed by someone with an unnatural face. By 1965, the FBI had compiled a CHO list of missing teenagers possibly connected to the case. Most had disappeared after creating drawings, writings, or telling friends about a white-faced man watching them. In each instance, family members were found murdered shortly after the teenager vanished. The investigation took a stranger turn when agents discovered that several of the missing teenagers had been patients at various psychiatric facilities before their disappearances. Medical records showed they had all been treated for severe insomnia, reporting that they couldn't sleep because "he watches when I close my eyes." The FBI's investigation abruptly ended in November 1965. All files were classified under national security protocols. When I pressed my contact at the Bureau about why, he would only say that the case was transferred to another agency. He wouldn't name which one. Through other sources, I learned that in the mid-1960s, a classified military program was investigating phenomena that blurred the line between psychological warfare and unexplained incidents. Several witnesses from this program, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed that the white face killer case, as it was known internally, became part of their research after similarities were noted between these murders and incidents reported near military installations. The killings continued through the 1970s, but with a disturbing new pattern. The missing teenagers were no longer just victims. Evidence suggested some had become perpetrators. Police in multiple jurisdictions documented killings committed by extremely pale young suspects. who were never apprehended. Witness descriptions matched: unnaturally white skin, lidless eyes, carved smiles. In 1979, a breakthrough came in the form of a survivor. David Koresh, no relation to the Branch Davidian leader, was 15 when he was abducted from his home in Tucson, Arizona. He escaped 3 days later and was found wandering along a highway, severely dehydrated and traumatized. When he finally spoke, he described being taken to an abandoned house by a teenager with a white face that wasn't a mask. According to the sealed psychiatric evaluation I obtained, David reported that his captor explained he needed to become like him and subjected him to a bizarre ritual involving household bleach, vodka, and a kitchen knife. The captor told David that once you become like this, you'll never want to sleep again. What makes David's testimony particularly valuable is that he escaped before the transformation was complete. He provided investigators with a critical detail. His captor referred to himself only as Jeff and claimed there were others like him across the country. David's family was placed in witness protection, and he was treated at a military facility for 6 months before being released with a new identity. My attempts to locate him have been unsuccessful. The last note in his file, dated December 1980, indicates he was still experiencing severe night terrors and facial hallucinations. Throughout the 1980s, the pattern evolved again. The murders became less frequent but more ritualized. Crime scene photos leaked from this period show family victims arranged in circles, their faces mutilated to resemble their killers. White skin, achieved through chemical burns, cutaway eyelids, carved smiles. The first photographic evidence of one of these Jeffs, as investigators had begun calling them, came in 1985 from a convenience store security camera in Tallahassee, Florida. The grainy image shows a thin figure with a pale, distorted face purchasing a knife set and bleach. 3 days later, a family of 4 was found murdered within a mile of the store. Their teenage son was missing. By the early 1990s, law enforcement agencies had compiled enough evidence to establish that they weren't dealing with a single killer, but with what appeared to be a spreading phenomenon. Teenagers would disappear, their families would be killed, and then new murders would begin in neighboring areas, presumably committed by the once missing teenagers who had somehow been transformed. This is where the story intersects with the digital age. In 1993, a special joint task force was created to track and contain what had become known internally as the Jeff phenomenon. As the internet became more widespread, the task force developed a new strategy: deliberate misinformation. A former member of this task force, who asked to be identified only as Agent K, confirmed to me that they began seeding early internet forums with fictional stories about Jeff the Killer, intentionally ridiculous, exaggerated tales that would make the reality seem like just another urban legend. We needed to hide it in plain sight, Agent K told me. By the mid-90s, we had nearly 30 active subjects across the country. The pattern of conversion was accelerating. The decision was made to turn it into fiction, something so over the top that no one would believe the real witness accounts. The strategy worked. By the early 2000s, Jeff the Killer had been successfully transformed in the public consciousness from a real serial killer phenomenon into an internet creepypasta, a made-up horror story shared online. The now infamous image that most associate with Jeff the Killer? A deliberately created composite released onto early horror forums to cement the fiction. But here's where the story becomes truly disturbing. The fictional version didn't stop the real phenomenon, it accelerated it. Between 2003 and 2008, reported Jeff-style killings increased by 400%. The task force's analysis suggested that the online stories were somehow facilitating the spread. Teenagers who spent time reading about the fictional Jeff became more susceptible to experiencing the phenomena themselves. They would report being watched by a pale figure, begin drawing the face compulsively, and then disappear. Days later, their families would be found murdered. The internet had turned what was once a rare, isolated phenomenon into something that could spread mimetically, through the very stories meant to disguise it. In 2008, the task force implemented Operation Shutdown, an effort to contain the digital spread. They flooded the internet with increasingly absurd variations of the Jeff story. They embedded agents in creepypasta communities to discredit realistic versions. They created and promoted the now famous photoshopped image, designing it to be obviously fake, to replace witness sketches that were circulating. For several years, it appeared to work. Reported incidents declined. The task force believed they had successfully contained the phenomenon by burying it in layers of obvious fiction. Then came 2012. A watershed moment, the year Jeff the Killer went truly viral. The carefully constructed fake image spread across Tumblr, YouTube, and emerging platforms like never before. Millions of teenagers were now familiar with Jeff the Killer, and with that exposure came a new wave of incidents. Between 2013 and 2015, 183 teenagers disappeared after reporting experiences consistent with the historical pattern. In 76 of these cases, family members were subsequently murdered. The remaining families reported their missing teenagers had been obsessed with Jeff the Killer stories online before vanishing. The task force's strategy had catastrophically backfired. By trying to hide the phenomenon as fiction, they had amplified its reach beyond anything seen before. In 2016, a new approach was implemented. Rather than fighting the spread of the story, agents began monitoring online engagement with Jeff the Killer content to identify potentially vulnerable teenagers. A specialized intervention program was developed to extract these teenagers before they could disappear or harm their families. Through confidential medical records, I've confirmed that between 2016 and 2019, over 400 teenagers were quietly committed to specialized facilities after showing signs of what official documents call Jeff syndrome, a condition involving insomnia, facial hallucinations, compulsive drawing of the same white face, and reports of being watched. The treatments developed for these teenagers remain classified, but former patients I've interviewed describe extensive therapy focused on sleep regulation, reality testing, and resistance to the calling, as many of them referred to it. One former patient, who asked to be called Morgan, described their experience. It starts with seeing him at your window at night, just watching. Then he's in your room. Then he's in your head. He tells you how to be like him, what you need to do. The doctors tried to convince us it wasn't real, but all of us in the facility had seen the exact same thing. How could we all hallucinate identical details? Morgan's testimony aligns with dozens of others I've collected. Each describes the same progression: first seeing the figure, then feeling compelled to recreate its appearance, then receiving instructions about transforming themselves and others. What makes this case particularly disturbing is how it confounds conventional explanation. The classified files I've accessed propose various theories: a contagious delusion, an elaborate cult, a psychological warfare experiment gone wrong, or something beyond current scientific understanding, what one document cryptically refers to as a mimetic entity. In 2020, the monitoring program was expanded to include AI scanning of social media for early warning signs. Teenagers showing interest in Jeff the Killer while exhibiting other risk factors, insomnia, sudden personality changes, art depicting white faces, are now quietly flagged for intervention. Which brings us to the present day. The true scope of what we're dealing with remains hidden from the public. The creepypasta continues to spread online. Most people who share it have no idea they're potentially exposing themselves to something far more dangerous than a fictional story. According to my sources, there are currently 37 active investigation sites across the United States where Jeff-style killings have occurred in the past 6 months. In each case, a teenager disappeared days before their family was murdered. In each case, the teenager had engaged with Jeff the Killer content online. The most recent incident occurred just 3 weeks ago in Lakewood, Colorado. 16-year-old Mason Fielding disappeared after telling his friends he was being watched by someone with no eyelids. 5 days later, his parents and younger sister were found dead, throats cut, eyelids removed. Mason remains missing. What disturbs me most as I conclude this investigation isn't just the decades of covered-up murders or the missing teenagers. It's the deliberate effort to hide this phenomenon in plain sight by disguising it as fiction. by convincing you it's just a story, and it's working. Even as you've read this, you've likely been thinking, this can't be real. This is just another layer of the fiction, an elaborate marketing scheme, a creative writing exercise. That skepticism is exactly what allows it to continue. But consider this. Every night, teenagers who have viewed that infamous photoshopped image report seeing a face at their window. A face with lidless eyes and a carved smile. Many of them disappear, their families die, and the cycle continues. The fictional story you know, about a teenager named Jeff who was burned with bleach and went insane, was created to hide the truth. The real entity behind these killings isn't a disfigured teenager. It's something that spreads through awareness of its existence, something that uses the teenagers it claims to find new victims, something that might now be aware of you. Because here's the most disturbing pattern my research has uncovered. Those who investigate too deeply, who get too close to the truth, report the same experience. They begin to tatitite, see it too. First at their windows, then in their rooms, then in their minds. 3 of the journalists who started this investigation with me have since disappeared. I know how this sounds. I know the rational response is to dismiss it as an elaborate fiction. That's the same response that has allowed this to continue for decades, the same reason families continue to die. I've stopped sleeping since compiling these files. I keep seeing a pale face in my peripheral vision. My bathroom mirror shows a figure behind me when I brush my teeth, but when I turn around, nothing's there. Classic signs of sleep deprivation, I tell myself. Not the beginning of what so many others have described. But last night, something changed. I heard my window slide open. Footsteps approached my bed. I kept my eyes shut, pretending to sleep. Then I felt breath on my face and a whispered voice. I know you're awake. I know you've been looking for me. Now I'm looking for you. When I opened my eyes, nothing was there. But on my mirror this morning, written in what looks like dried blood, spread my story. And so I have. Perhaps that was the mistake all along. The entity needs us to spread awareness of it to continue existing. Or perhaps sharing this warning is the only way to fight it. I don't know anymore. What I do know is that the image you think is Jeff the killer is not what the real victims see. The actual face is much worse. The photoshopped version was deliberately designed to be obviously fake to discredit the real witness accounts. The real face is thinner, the smile wider and more jagged, like it was cut with a dull blade. The eyes don't have that artificial wideness, they simply have no lids, giving them a constant, unblinking stare. And the skin isn't smooth white like the Photoshop, it's bleached and burned with visible chemical scarring. If you've read this far, you might already be at risk. Those who know the true story report seeing it first within 2-3 days. It starts at your window, just watching, waiting for you to acknowledge it. What happens next follows the same pattern established over decades. You'll feel compelled to recreate its image. You'll stop sleeping. You'll begin to hear it speak to you. It will tell you how to become like it. And then you'll disappear. Days later, your family will be found with their throats cut and their eyelids removed. Unless you're reading this because you've already seen it. In that case, you're already part of the pattern, already being changed, already learning what you'll need to do to your family. If you think I'm making this up, I understand. I would have thought the same 3 years ago. But ask yourself, why do so many people report seeing the same figure after learning about Jeff the killer? Why do police records show an uptick in family murders with the same signature details following the spread of the story online? Why are there specialized government programs monitoring teenagers who engage with this content? For those who recognize the truth in what I've shared, there are warning signs to watch for. Sudden insomnia, feeling watched, compulsive drawing of faces, hearing whispers at night. If you experience these, seek help immediately. There are specialized treatment centers, though they operate under different public names. Search for sleep disorder clinics with behavioral integration therapy in their descriptions. This is the code phrase used to identify facilities equipped to handle these cases. For everyone else, be careful what you share online. The story of Jeff the killer isn't just a creepypasta. It's something far worse disguised as fiction. something that spreads through awareness, something that watches those who know about it, something that might be watching you right now. Turn around, check your window. Are you sure you're alone? Sleep well tonight, if you still can.